If any of the trains you get on turn out to be heading in the wrong direction, get off the train. Don't be overly afraid of risk. And especially right now, be wary of predicting which fields are going to be the most promising. Those predictions can eliminate all sorts of magic and meaning. Don't go into public service. You'll get death threats. Medicine leads to burnout, we've been told. Academia, now, really? Follow this logic to the end, and we will have no public servants, and no doctors, and no professors.
That was part of New York Times reporter Jodi Kantor's Columbia commencement speech last year. That moment, offering wisdom, strategy, and a set of aspirations to new graduates, sparked the beginning of the journey to her newest book, entitled How to Start, in which she tackles the question, how in this environment is anyone supposed to find and start their life's work? An important and wide-ranging, timely topic. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jodi Kantor joins us now. It's good to have you on the show this morning, and congratulations on the book.
Yeah, and Jodi, we're going to get to the book in a minute, but we want to talk about your article on the Shadow Docket last week. A remarkable piece of work, and I found 2025 to be an especially vexing, troubling time when the court often seemed to just sort of kick the can down the road or have unsigned opinions, overturn or stay lower court rulings, basically waiting for the better part of a year to rule in ways that we knew they would ultimately rule if they ever had a written opinion, saying things, simple things like, no, you can't use military troops in American cities for domestic policing. But it took them to the end of the year to do that. But explain how they used the shadow docket throughout much of 2025 to just basically turn so much of their power over to the administration.
Well, when we think of a Supreme Court case, we think of something so slow and deliberate and careful that plays out, say, over a year. There are oral arguments in public. The justices meet together in person to deliberate and cast their votes. There's a lot of reading. There's a lot of drafting of opinions. And then, of course, there is the opinion or set of opinions that's presented to the public. And that's a vital act because, listen, elected officials get their accountability through elections, right? Judges get authority through opinions by saying, I'm going to show you my work. Even if you disagree with my decision, I am going to explain to you how I was diligent, how I was fair, how I reached that conclusion. The shadow docket opinions that you're talking about, and you're talking about some incredibly consequential decisions that handed a lot of power to President Trump. Some of them were done on a secretive fast track called the emergency docket or the shadow docket at the Supreme Court. And there were really no opinions. There were these short little orders that had some legal boilerplate, but didn't have any reasoning, which we think of as the bedrock of the law. So the article that Adam and I did and the memos we publish take us back to the beginning of that practice. They help answer the question, wait a second, how did the justices of the Supreme Court and Chief Justice John Roberts disregard centuries of time-tested legal tradition and start making decisions in this faster and far more secretive way?
Well, you also pointed out that they used it first in 2016 to stop Barack Obama, and then they've been using it since Donald Trump became president to actually enable Donald Trump. Talk about that.
Well, there is a big question about whether the shadow docket kind of enables partisanship on the Supreme Court. Because if, our ideal of the court, of course, is that it is above politics and that these justices are making independent decisions, what the results show and what scholars have found is that when the court makes decisions on the shadow docket, they seem to come out in a more partisan way.
Yeah. Help me out. Just overall, when they're not doing the shadow docket, when they have to write the opinions, when they have to do the big cases and they put their name on it, you get the tariff decision. You get what I suspect will be an absolute disregard of what the Trump administration wants to do on birthright citizenship. You got, as I said before, at the end of the year last year, the opinion that stopped Donald Trump from using the National Guard and Marines for policing, domestic policing in America. Overall, talk about the difference between where they stand in regard to the president's power, Article 2 power, when they actually have to put their names on a written opinion, and what happens when they just do a speedy shadow docket decision.
You know, what I think that the story that Adam Liptak and I published really revealed is how rushed these shadow docket opinions are. Remember, we put 16 pages of the justices' secret correspondence into the paper. This story allows us to essentially eavesdrop on the justices as they make these shadow docket opinions. And what you see is that they are moving so fast. The figure who emerges most strongly from this set of papers is Chief Justice John Roberts. And the court is doing something for the first time in these papers. They are stopping President Obama's big climate initiative, even though the D.C. Circuit is about to weigh in. The shadow docket grew slowly over years, but they're crossing a line in this set of papers. And what's so striking is that Democratic-appointed colleagues are raising the procedural objections of, like, why are we doing this so fast? What is the rush? And the Chief Justice just disregards their procedural objections. And the truth is that none of them, there is not a single memo in the entire conversation that reflects a concern that they may be opening a door to a precarious new way of doing business.
We'll continue to follow this, but want to ask you about your book, How to Start. I love the title, especially because in this economy and the void being created by AI, I think there are a lot of job seekers who are truly discouraged and don't know how to do just that, how to start. So tell us about the book and how can discouraged job seekers use it to help themselves get focused and find that elusive craft or work that they're looking for.
So I wrote this book because, listen, I've covered employment for many years. My colleague Megan Twohey and I broke the Harvey Weinstein story. I had been a witness and chronicler of employment for a long time, but I wanted to write something that could actually help. Because, listen, this show, the New York Times, we have all reported the negative news about the entry-level job market. It is a really tough environment. But the provocative question to me is, what is a young person actually supposed to do when faced with this situation? What does a productive response look like? And can you actually, amid all the gloom, take steps and follow a process that help you build your life's work and help you become the author of your own life?
So, Jodi, congrats on this indeed. And in the book, you identify the two things that these young people need: craft and need. Explain to us what you mean by that. Okay.
Craft is having a special skill that other people don't know how to do, like an expertise that is all your own. Surgery, obviously a craft. Like if you make the recipes in NYT Cooking and they come out really good, it's because my colleagues used the craft of writing recipes that can turn out well, even for regular home cooks. Putting together this TV show every day, certainly a craft. The reason you want to look for a craft and not just a job is that craft protects you a little bit from the cruelties of the job market. I mean, listen, any of us who are employees can be fired at any time, but your craft is your own. It can never be taken away from you. Also, at this very kind of dystopian time of work, if you work on your craft for years and years, and this is hard to see when you're 22, you can get to a level of mastery that brings such satisfaction. Like, I've been doing investigative stories for a long time. I took such pride in that Supreme Court reporting that you guys were gracious enough to feature. Like, it feels good for Adam and I to use the skills that we have acquired for 20 years and deploy them for the public good. Okay, so if craft is authority, need is propulsion. We go through these fashions of what you're supposed to study. When I was young, it was learn Japanese, right? The Japanese are going to take over the world economy, and if you don't speak Japanese, you're going to be a loser. Well, Japanese is great, but like the Japanese stock market slumped for 20 years. It wasn't a sure bet. All the things we've been told, learn genetics, learn Mandarin, you have to learn computer coding. These are fine pursuits, but they are not golden tickets. They are herd thinking. So with need, I want to say to young people, using your eyes and ears, what can you independently identify as the needs that are going to be important over the next 40 or 50 years, and how can you help fulfill them? And the reason why thinking about need is so helpful right now is that young people are being sent a terrible message by the AI era. They are being told you're superfluous, that, you know, paralegals aren't necessary, that junior analysts aren't necessary. And with need, I want them to make a counterclaim for themselves. I want them to say, I am needed. My contributions, my ideas, my energy, they're gonna matter.
All right, the new book, How to Start, is available now. Author and New York Times Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Jodi Kantor. Thank you very much for coming on the show this morning.
Thank you.